Good morning, Jake. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Glad to have you with us and really interested to get into this conversation because finals week is almost here. I'm sure a lot of kids are really nervous and really looking forward to getting these finals done and looking forward to their future. What are some common behaviors you tend to see from the kids around this time of year?
Being overwhelmed, just knowing that this final's kind of coming. Some it is a cumulative final, so it's all of semester. Some they just might have a project or a final or test for just a chapter from there. We find that we really work a lot with kids with time management, especially right now, with them kind of doing a schedule where they should have already been starting to study this week for their final exams, which are next week. And we're not talking about like 10 to 15 hours at a time. We're talking about a half an hour reviewing notes, making study guides, whether it is through a Quizlet, study cards, studying with a partner, going over different problems. There's some different websites that each like kind of subject might use. Like example of Khan Academy might have some stuff for math. For them. So we're really encouraging early, like studying in smaller increments. So it is not just like a dump in there for like put as much information in at what time and not being able to retain it. And then we also have study sessions with different like teachers that kind of host some things. So we're always encouraging kids to do that. As we kind of get into the especially first round for our ninth graders doing exams the first time they've ever done it. So what to kind of expect with them. We've done some stuff with ninth grade advisories trying to prepare them for this.
That's absolutely right. Lots of really important things that they have to get into right now. And speaking from experience, I will tell you, Quizlet is a very helpful guide. Certainly saved my butt back when I was dealing with finals. But what would you say are some of the biggest concerns that these kids have, especially not only dealing with finals, but also trying to navigate so many other things to try to get into a good college?
I think a lot of it is like time management of like they feel like they have to do everything at once. So they might be into a sport, but they don't have any job experience and they're like trying to get a job, trying to also do community service at that time. Where I say spread it out. So if you know that your busiest season because you're in basketball right now, it is maybe during the spring and the fall, we focus a little bit more on you to be working with community service and kind of getting more of those hours in. Finding just balance, like that is I think one of the hardest things even from COVID is kids having balance, because if you're going to be busy for 20 hours of the day, when are you going to rest, when are you going to be able to recoup, and so that we find that the busy that they are, the more stressed that they may become. So we're really trying to work on that. I said like time management and like even like a calendar being like, all right, I know that I want to get into this school. I'm really interested in occupational therapy. Maybe in the summer, can we have you work with an occupational therapist? Can we, have some other different things, but to use it like in a timeline instead of like, I have to leave to go to college in 2 months. What can I do for this? What, trying to figure out in the next like few years or try to do like a plan. We're meeting with our like students at least 2 to 3 times a year, much more on many other occasions, but of kind of get those things in place for them early on. So in 10th grade, if they really feel like they want to go do this, setting them up with the stuff they need to be successful to get into those colleges. So early on interaction and then trying to like kind of plot that out.
You're absolutely right. Make sure you manage that time and make sure you use it very wisely. Now, Joanne, I was a high school student once, and you were a high school student once as well. And the landscape has changed a lot from dealing with finals then to dealing with finals now. What would you say are some of the biggest things that kids are dealing with now that maybe they didn't have to deal with back when you were in high school?
I would say it's just a different way of studying and different ways of, different project-based stuff. I can, test that we didn't have a lot of AI stuff or we didn't have as many tools. So like when we say Quizlet, when I was in, high school, I was using a lot of flashcards or like my friends and I would make up different stuff or like we had to do a lot more of that legwork where there's a lot of resources, I think, for the kids now. But them to be able to find it and still like let them know that you have to put in the work still. That they feel like sometimes they want something instantaneous and they think that's just it. But you really still have to put in the work for the understanding, having that deeper comprehension of things. and kind of really being able to recite it back to you, Jake. So like if I take in a theory, I have to be able to tell you exactly what that means so I understand it myself.
For those just joining us on the Splash Live, we have the counselor with the West Bloomfield High School, Joanne Wegrzynowicz, joining us right now to talk about some tips and some skills for high school students to be aware of as final season continues to approach, and they're dealing with a lot of stress and a lot of nervousness as those finals really come soon. So with dealing with these tests, what would you say are some of the biggest pieces of advice you could tell these kids to keep in mind, not just regarding these tests, but also regarding their future in general?
So I think two things kind of come to mind. Have a study plan. That is huge. Then the other part is this is just one piece of their whole, makeup. So like, let's say they don't do as well on the test and they get a C on this test. Does this make or break them? No, it does not, because it is one slice of many different slices that colleges will be looking at. But I do encourage after finals, let's look about what we could have done differently. How could we have made it? I know that you're disappointed that you may have gotten a C on this final. What could we have changed for next time? Because I think that is also really good to kind of reflect of what really works for you and what does not work for you. Because we have some kids that, can memorize like in a heartbeat. And we have other kids that have a harder time with it. Other kids really do well on reading, but math is a struggle for them. So really knowing what's doing well for them personally and really kind of building on that, because what we want them to have is great skills going into college. So we're like kind of like a work in progress with, making sure we have skills. Often we talk about like middle school might have been really easy for some kids. They've never had a challenge really. They've never really had to study really hard. And when we get to high school, we finally get to kind of have that evening point where they might have now more of a challenge and they don't know how to study because life has been so easy for them. So really kind of teaching them how to study and how to kind of go back to like kind of look at those things of, you just can't sit in class and retain it and take that test anymore because we are getting to that higher level thinking. So like really teaching them how to kind of pull that back and how to study for that kind of stuff.
Those study skills are things that absolutely you should have ingrained in your mind as soon as possible. And I actually think I had those ingrained when I was in middle school. That's when I noticed the big change from the kinds of content I was studying from elementary school up to middle school. It was a very big shift, and it took me some time to get used to it. But you're absolutely right in that these are skills that people need to retain. And we just talked about that a little bit in terms of maybe things don't work out for these kids on the final as they had hoped they would, and you were offering some advice for things to look out for. What are some other pieces of advice you could offer kids if things start to go in a different direction than they had initially seemed?
So biggest thing too. So when they start feeling like they're not understanding and start things like even in the class start to go so they're hesitant to always ask for help. So if you're already at an F, you should have been probably asking for help when your grade's starting to slip down to a B or a C. So if you're going one whole grade down, it is asking for help. We do have some different things that we can do at the high school where we do have an advisory hour that can travel so you can get extra tutoring with a certain teacher if you need it. Reaching out, and we do have like tutoring here through NHS students. A lot of the teachers have different times, which they might come early in the morning or stay a little late in the afternoon or have luncheon, like drop-ins where they can also get another help, from there too. But having the kids utilize that we don't want you to wait till you're all the way dug yourself a huge hole to try to get yourself out of that, to kind of use those techniques. And there's no shame in that. We've all had to ask for help one way or another, but to like kind of advocate for yourself. So building those tools to advocate like, hey, I'm not understanding this. I need to have a little extra help.
There's certainly no shame in asking for help. Joanne, I want to thank you so much for your time today. I got one more question before I let you go. Any final bits of encouragement you could offer these kids with finals approaching very quickly?
Make sure you're taking care of yourself, like thinking that to study all night and then come in with no sleep, that doesn't do you anything great either. So making sure you're eating well, getting enough fluids, getting your proper amount of sleep, making that study schedule. It's still not too late because you still have a few days before we're starting into finals. So even saying if you're studying for an hour tonight and 3 hours tomorrow, and really just trying to not overdo it, but still make yourself kind of do that study for a schedule, because I think when we get so overwhelmed, it's like a shutdown mode. But if you have a schedule and you kind of stick to it, give yourself some breaks, I think life will feel a little bit easier for you. And it's normal to feel a little nervous with a big test. Making sure that you kind of understand that.
Stick to that schedule. And yeah, all-nighters might not be your friend in this scenario. But Joanne, I want to thank you so much for your time today and coming on The Splash.
Thank you, Jake, for everything. You take care, okay?